The red paint dripped down the side of my 1965 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud like blood from a fresh wound. It caught the morning light as I stood there barefoot in my driveway, still in pajamas, watching 8 months of labor dissolve in 30 seconds. The chemical bite filled the air, sharp enough to sting my throat. But this wasn't some act of random vandalism. Tucked beneath my wiper blade fluttered an official notice stamped in bold. Vehicle removed for code violations. Contact Brenda Kensington for retrieval information. Brenda Kensington, the queen of Maplewood Estates, the self-crowned ruler of our quiet suburban cage. That car wasn't junk. It was my lifeline. $8,000 of rust reborn into a $200,000 masterpiece. And now it stood vandalized by the very woman who was supposed to protect our neighborhood. The wet paint was still tacky when I touched it. That meant she'd done this recently, maybe within the hour. She thought I'd crumble under her paperwork and threats. She thought wrong. 6 months earlier, I was just Marcus Holloway, 58, retired Boeing machinist and widower trying to remember how silence could coexist with breathing. My wife, Elena, had died that March. Cancer. The kind of slow heartbreak that makes every creak in the house feel like a ghost. By October, I was drowning in quiet. Then I saw her, the Rolls, buried under dust in my late neighbor's garage, its body dulled but still noble. $8,000 cash at an estate sale, engine locked solid, leather chewed by mice, the whole thing reeking of mildew and forgotten time. Most people saw junk metal. I saw salvation. I moved to Maplewood Estates for peace, not for battles with bureaucrats. Neat lawns, friendly waves, a homeowners association that mostly kept to itself. The flatbed dropped the rolls in my driveway on a Tuesday. I hadn't even gotten my toolbox out when I heard the click of high heels behind me. "Excuse me. Are you the new owner?" Brenda Kensington looked like she'd stepped straight out of a glossy real estate brochure. Hair curled to perfection, beige power suit pressed within an inch of its life, and that clipboard, always that clipboard, like a sword sheathed in regulation. "That vehicle is in violation of community standards," she declared before even introducing herself. "It's been here 20 minutes, I said. "Inoperable vehicles aren't permitted in visible areas." Click, click, click. Her phone camera fired off like a paparazzo at a scandal. I tried civility. "It's a hobby project." 72 hours, she replied, handing me a citation already filled out, her name printed like a signature of doom. And yet when she looked at the car, really looked at it, her eyes softened. "Beautiful machine," she murmured, almost to herself. "Such a shame to see it abandoned." "It's not abandoned," I said. "It's being restored." Her smile returned, synthetic and sharp. "Well, Mr. Holloway, 72 hours. Then she strutted off, heels tapping like countdown clocks. But later that night, I checked my security feed. There she was, circling the block 3 times in her white BMW, headlights gliding past my driveway. Not checking rules, studying, plotting. By Wednesday, the citations multiplied like weeds. Commercial vehicle storage, because an engine hoist had been delivered. Noise violation, on a day I hadn't even opened the garage. Improper waste disposal, because of a cardboard box. I owed $400 in fines within the week. Each new notice carried that same signature. Brenda Kensington. My neighbor Jerry knocked one morning, scratching his head. "Strangest thing, Marcus. HOA lady called me yesterday asking if you were running some kind of auto shop." She already seemed to know my answers. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just making up rules, she was fabricating witness statements, building a case file like a prosecutor preparing for trial. She wanted my project, and maybe my property gone. That weekend, I dove into the Washington State Vehicle Code. I found the clause that changed everything: the hobby restoration exemption, a 180-day legal grace period for private vehicle restoration, protected under state law. Everything she cited was outdated or outright illegal. I prepared my counterattack like an engineer drawing blueprints. Organized, thorough, impossible to dispute. Monday morning, I sent formal appeals for every violation, complete with photos, code references, and a copy of the exemption statute. I mailed it to the HOA board, the property management company, and for good measure, Brenda's real estate broker. By evening, she struck back. Citation 38. Unauthorized hazardous material storage. My crime? A quart of Valvoline in my garage. But this time, I didn't crumble. I rolled out my tools, set up my hoist, and got to work. The first twist of a rusted bolt sang like defiance. The smell of motor oil and old steel filled the air. Familiar, grounding. Within an hour, half the neighborhood had gathered. Jerry, Tom, Mrs. Patterson, even the mailman pretending to pass by twice. When the Rolls engine finally gave a guttural cough, Tom whistled. That's more chrome than a Harley convention. Then, right on cue, the white BMW rolled by, slow as a shark. Brenda's phone camera glinted from the window. By Wednesday, she escalated again. City code enforcement. A man in uniform appeared at my door with a clipboard, looking exhausted before he even spoke. Mr. Holloway, we've had 19 complaints from the same caller. Says you're operating a commercial shop. 19? He sighed. Yeah, same number, same voice. Woman identifying herself as a concerned neighbor. Brenda. He closed his notebook. She's wasting taxpayer money, sir. Frankly, she's lucky we don't bill her for it. When he left, I realized she'd just handed me gold. Official proof of her false reports. That wasn't HOA enforcement anymore. That was harassment with a paper trail, and I knew exactly how to use it. But Brenda wasn't done. Thursday morning, my homeowner's insurance called. Anonymous tip alleging I was running an unlicensed repair business. My policy was flagged for review. I could almost hear her smug satisfaction through the phone line. That afternoon, Jerry came by again, face pale. She asked about your finances, Marcus. What you paid for the house, how long you've lived here. Even asked if the car looked expensive. The realization hit like cold water. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was conducting reconnaissance. For what I didn't yet know. But the war for my driveway had just become a war for my home. The next morning, the smell of fresh coffee barely masked the tension in the air. The neighborhood was quiet, but under that stillness, I could feel the weight of her eyes from somewhere down the block. Every time the wind rattled a branch or a car door shut, I half expected to see that white BMW glide past again, prowling like a ghost on four wheels. It wasn't paranoia anymore. Brenda was watching me, documenting, circling, feeding on control. By week's end, I had another stack of citations waiting like unwanted mail, improper vehicle orientation, unauthorized deliveries, and even aesthetic disruption. Each new slip of paper was just another way of saying you don't belong here. But the truth was, I did belong here. I'd worked my whole life for this home. Every inch of it, from the polished tools in my garage to the bricks in the driveway, had been earned through calloused hands and sleepless nights at Boeing. I wasn't about to let some power-hungry real estate agent rewrite that. So I shifted gears. I stopped reacting to her moves and started anticipating them. My years in aviation engineering had taught me one thing. Systems always break at their weakest point. And Brenda's system was her arrogance. Every lie she told, every false report, every little abuse of authority left a paper trail. And I was going to make sure that trail led straight back to her. It didn't take long for the cracks to widen. My neighbor Jerry knocked again one afternoon, beer in hand, his face wearing that look of disbelief you only see when good people witness bad things. She called again, he said, shaking his head. Asked if you seemed unstable since your wife passed. I froze mid-step. Unstable? The word rolled off my tongue like poison. That's what she said. Claimed she was checking on the mental well-being of a grieving neighbor. My jaw tightened until I heard my own teeth grind. Brenda wasn't just after my property anymore. She was trying to build a psychological profile to make me look unfit, unstable, untrustworthy. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just harassing me. She was setting the stage to legally remove me. The next day proved it. 2 men in suits pulled up in a black SUV, badges gleaming in the morning sun. Mr. Holloway, we're from Adult Protective Services, one said carefully. We received a report of potential self-neglect and concerning behavior following your wife's passing. My stomach dropped. Brenda had actually called in a welfare check. The men were polite, even sympathetic, but I could see the same exhaustion in their faces the code officer had worn. "You're clearly fine, sir," one finally said, glancing at my spotless garage. "Your property's immaculate. Whoever called this in wasted everyone's time." I watched them drive off and realized something critical. Brenda's obsession wasn't just vindictive, it was strategic. She was escalating step by step, trying to destroy me legally before I could fight back. By the end of that week, her campaign had become relentless. My mailbox overflowed with warnings. My insurance company had reopened my case, and rumors were spreading that I was mentally declining. Neighbors whispered at mailboxes, hesitant to look me in the eye. That's when I called Jim Martinez, my late wife's estate attorney. Jim was sharp, no nonsense, and allergic to bureaucracy. "Marcus, she's crossing into criminal territory," he said after reading through the stack of letters I'd scanned for him. "You've got false reporting, defamation, and procedural fraud. Start documenting everything." That word, documentation, became my weapon. Every call, every notice, every photo, I logged them all. My garage became a command center, labeled folders, video timestamps, cross-referenced files. I treated it like an engineering project, except this time the blueprint wasn't for a jet, it was for justice. And every hour Brenda spent digging her own hole, I was waiting with a shovel of my own. Then came the night that turned anger into purpose. My security cameras pinged around 11 p.m. I checked the feed and froze. There she was, Brenda herself, walking up my driveway, flashlight in hand, testing my garage door handle, peering through the window like a thief. I watched her lean in close, phone camera flashing, snapping photos of oil cans, rags, and tools. She was building her next narrative: hazardous waste, environmental threat, chemical danger. Except this time she'd made her biggest mistake yet. She wasn't just trespassing, she was recording herself doing it. I saved the footage in 3 different formats and backed it up to the cloud. Tomorrow, I thought, she's going to regret underestimating a machinist. The next morning, the police came again, this time for illegal dumping and environmental contamination. 2 deputies walked through my spotless garage, glanced at my neatly stored oil drums, and laughed. "Sir, whoever filed this report clearly has an agenda. You're cleaner than most city shops." I handed them a USB drive containing the footage from the night before. "Might want to look at your suspect," I said. The older deputy whistled low when he saw Brenda testing my door handle. "Yeah," he muttered. "That'll do it. That'll do." That was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't the one under investigation anymore, she was. While I fortified my defense, Brenda's tactics grew more desperate. She filed for an emergency HOA hearing, trying to push a lien on my property for unpaid violations. The document was a mess of fake regulations and bold claims, but what stood out most was the fine print. Her signature next to every false charge. Jim nearly laughed when he read it. "Marcus, this thing's full of holes. Half these codes don't even exist. She's bluffing with counterfeit authority." But Brenda didn't know I had already gone deeper. I dug through the original Maplewood HOA charter from 1987, a photocopy buried in the county records office, and found the golden ticket, an explicit clause protecting automotive restoration of vehicles over 25 years old. Not only was my project legal, it was protected. Every fine she'd issued was a violation of the HOA's own foundation. By the following weekend, my garage buzzed like an aircraft hangar. The Rolls was nearly finished, gleaming under fresh chrome and new paint, and the engine sang like a resurrection hymn when I turned the key. Neighbors began stopping by, not to complain but to admire. Even those who'd once whispered now smiled. Tom, my friend from across the street, leaned on the fence one evening, beer in hand, eyes wide with pride. "She's scared, Marcus. You can see it. You turned her whole story upside down." He was right. The narrative had changed. I wasn't the unhinged widower anymore. I was the guy who stood up to a tyrant. But Brenda's next move went beyond harassment. That night my doorbell rang at 6 a.m. I opened it to two deputies holding yet another report. Unauthorized hazardous material storage. I laughed. You're joking. Wish we were, one said, glancing at his partner. Same caller, same story. I invited them in, showed them my safety setup, EPA-approved containers labeled storage, even a recycling bin for waste oil. The younger officer took notes, shaking his head. Sir, this isn't about the car anymore, this is personal. Personal didn't begin to cover it. When they left, I stood in the garage doorway, staring at the polished curve of the Rolls-Royce's hood. The reflection in the metal showed me not the man Brenda tried to destroy, but the man she'd accidentally rebuilt. The machinist, the husband, the fighter. She wanted a broken man. Instead, she'd forged something stronger. The war was far from over, but I'd already drawn the battle lines. And the next move, the decisive one, wouldn't come from her clipboard. It would come from me. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, the neighborhood was boiling with whispers. Brenda had spent months weaving lies and paper threats, but all her words would soon collapse under the weight of truth. I arrived early, folder in hand, every document, photograph, and timestamp ready like ammunition. The community center smelled of burnt coffee and fresh anger. Neighbors filled every seat, some standing in the back, curiosity and tension mixing in the air. Brenda sat at the front table, expression cold and polished, but her fingers trembled when she adjusted the mic. For the first time, she looked unsure. She opened the meeting with her usual tone, tight, rehearsed, dripping with authority. We're here to address ongoing violations affecting property values, she said, eyes darting toward me like daggers. But the audience wasn't with her anymore. The old guard had seen through her charm. When Mrs. Patterson raised her hand, the room fell silent. Before we talk about violations, Brenda, maybe we should discuss the trespassing, the police calls, and those fake reports with your name on them. Brenda's face froze in a mask of denial, but the murmurs in the crowd grew louder. I stood slowly, walking to the front with the calm of a man who'd already won. I laid my folder on the table, opened it, and began. Here are 43 documented instances of harassment, 12 false government reports, and evidence of property manipulation for personal profit. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I projected each piece on the screen. Security footage, emails, even her fake environmental citations. This isn't enforcement, I said, my voice steady. It's extortion dressed in neighborhood colors. When I revealed the 1987 charter protecting restoration projects, even the board members stared in disbelief. Brenda tried to interrupt, but her voice cracked. He's emotionally unstable, she blurted. Ever since his wife. That was her final mistake. The room erupted in outrage. You could feel decades of neighborly politeness shatter all at once. Then came the knockout. Jerry stood up from the back, phone raised. And this, he said, is Brenda offering me money to say Marcus was unstable. Her voice echoed across the speakers, clear, undeniable. Help me prove it, and I'll make sure your property sells fast. That was all it took. Every neighbor turned against her. The board president called for her resignation on the spot. But before she could even stand, 2 sheriff's deputies entered from the back of the room. Mrs. Kensington, one said, you're under arrest for mail tampering, filing false reports, and real estate fraud. The handcuffs clicked like punctuation at the end of a long sentence. Cameras flashed, neighbors cheered, and for the first time in months, I breathed without feeling watched. 6 months later, Brenda pleaded guilty to everything. Her real estate license was gone, her empire of intimidation dismantled brick by brick. The neighborhood transformed. Coffee gatherings replaced complaint forms, and kids rode bikes past my driveway waving at the shiny silver rolls that had started it all. My YouTube channel, HOA Stories, grew beyond anything I'd imagined. People from across the country sent their own battles and victories, proof that every Brenda eventually meets her match. On quiet evenings, I still polish the rolls under the orange glow of sunset, the engine humming like peace restored. Sometimes I think of Elena, her laughter echoing faintly in the rhythm of the motor. And I realize Brenda never destroyed me. She rebuilt me. Because the best revenge isn't anger or victory. It's creation. It's living well in the home they tried to take away. So, to everyone watching, remember this. When someone tries to break you with their small rules, fix something instead. Build, restore, rise. Because the only thing more powerful than revenge is resilience.